All right, we've all been there, right? Staring at a reading comprehension test. You read a passage, you answer some questions, seems simple enough, but have you ever really stopped to think about what those tests are actually measuring? Is it just your reading skills, or is something else going on? Today, we are going to pull back the curtain on that exact question.
I mean, really think about it. Let's say you're a history whiz and you get a reading passage on quantum physics. Or maybe you're an engineer and suddenly you're reading about 14th century economics. Does that lack of background knowledge put you at a disadvantage even if you're a fantastic reader? This isn't just a random thought. It's a huge dilemma in the world of language testing.
So, here's our game plan. We're going to treat this like a real investigation. We'll start with the dilemma, check out the first clues, uncover a really puzzling result that just messes everything up, and then we'll introduce our two main suspects, knowledge versus language. We'll even get a peek behind the scenes at the struggles the researchers had before we get to the final takeaway. Okay, let's get into it.
Our main case file today is a classic, a 1985 study by Alderson and Urquhart. Honestly, if you're serious about language assessment, this is one of those papers you just have to know. They wanted to investigate this background knowledge effect, specifically in what we call ESP, or English for Specific Purposes tests.
This was the big question they were trying to crack. Does your major, what you study day in and day out, actually systematically change how you score on a reading test, especially if that test is about your own field? You'd think the answer would be a simple dove, of course, but as we're about to find out, it's way, way more interesting than that. So, the researchers kick things off with a study that seemed to give them a really clear, simple answer. They got a few groups of students from different fields and gave them reading tests on different subjects. Pretty straightforward.
And wow, look at these results. They're just so neat. The engineering students, they did better on the engineering text. The development administration students, they nailed the development text. It's a perfect mirror image. It seems to confirm exactly what you and I would expect to happen.
So this is our first big clue. This study points right to the background knowledge effect. Basically, if you know stuff about a topic, you'll probably do better on a test about it. Case closed, right? We can all go home? Well, not quite.
You know, any good researcher knows that one study is never the whole story. So Alderson and Urquhart ran a second, much bigger study. They figured it would just confirm what they already found. But nope. What they found instead was a real head-scratcher.
Okay, so based on that first study, the prediction was easy. Engineers are going to smoke the development students on the engineering texts. But in reality, that didn't happen at all. The two groups scored pretty much the same. The engineers' home field advantage just vanished. The weird part was the effect was only one way. The development students still did better on their own texts, but the engineers got no bonus points on theirs. And this is where the plot really thickens, because they ran a third study and the same weird thing happened, but kind of in reverse. This time they used parts of an official test, a forerunner to the IELTS, with social studies, technology, and liberal arts students. And once again, the results were just not what you'd predict. Okay, check this out. On the technology test, the tech students scored the highest. That makes sense, right? The background knowledge effect is working. But then, on the social studies test, the social studies students scored exactly the same as the tech students. They got zero advantage on their own turf. It's the same puzzle, just flipped.
So this becomes the million-dollar question. Why does this background knowledge boost just seem to evaporate for some groups but not for others? It's so inconsistent. Clearly, just saying knowledge helps isn't going to cut it. There has to be something else going on.
And this is what leads the researchers to bring in two main suspects to explain this mystery. On one hand, you've got your background knowledge. And on the other, you've got your general language skill.
So, suspect number one, background knowledge. And the researchers are really specific here. They define it as, quote, particular knowledge of information contained in the texts. It's not just being familiar with the topic. In fact, when they interviewed some engineers, the students literally told them, oh yeah, I already knew most of this stuff.
Then we've got suspect number two, linguistic proficiency. And again, this isn't just about grammar and vocab. They call it a, quote, generalized text handling ability. Think of it as just being a really skilled reader. You know how to navigate a text,
Find the main idea and figure things out no matter what the topic is.
And this is where that third group from the study, the liberal arts students, becomes so important. On pre-tests, they consistently had the highest general language skills. And guess what? They tended to do pretty well across the board, even on the technical texts they knew nothing about. This is a huge clue. It suggests that if your reading skills are strong enough, you can sometimes just power through a lack of specific knowledge.
And this, right here, is the absolute core finding of the whole paper. A test score isn't just about reading skill, and it isn't just about what you know. It's the product of a complex interaction between the two. Sometimes your knowledge gives you a leg up. Other times, your strong language skills are all you need. It all depends.
Now, for a second, I want to take a step back from the findings and just talk about the process of doing this research, because Alderson and Urquhart are incredibly honest about the challenges they faced, and it's a fantastic lesson for anyone doing research.
I love this quote. Seriously, it's one of my favorites in all of testing literature because it perfectly captures the big trade-off we always face. You can design this perfect, clean experiment in a lab, but it's totally artificial. Or you can study people in a real classroom, but it's messy and you can't control everything. You can see this exact dilemma in their own work. In their first lab study, the students didn't really care and some of them just got up and left early. But in their third classroom study, they used real high-stakes placement tests. That's realistic for sure, but they couldn't control for things like students just getting better at English over time. There's just no perfect way to do it.
So after all of that, where does this leave us? After digging through all these confusing results and challenges, what's the final verdict we can walk away with?
Well, the case is definitely not closed with a simple answer. We know for sure that background knowledge can matter a lot. But, and this is a big but, that effect is super unpredictable. We also know that your general language skill is a powerhouse factor that's always interacting with your knowledge. And on top of all that, the test itself, how hard the text is, the types of questions, can change the whole game. So the final verdict is one you'll hear a lot in our field. It's complicated.
So the next time you see a reading test score, remember this. You're not looking at some pure, simple measure of reading ability. You're looking at the result of this dynamic dance between what a person knows, how well they can handle language, and the actual test they were handed.
And that leaves us with this one last big question to chew on. If every test score is this complex mix of things, then what are we really measuring when we give a reading test? And how can we possibly design tests that are as fair and as valid as they can be? That right there is the challenge this amazing study leaves for all of us.